I suppose that's one of the lessons learned, is that the selling process or the selling skills are pretty transferable, right, from
Mm-hmm.
one industry to another. But you do start to need to learn the language of the industry and learn the language of what happens there. Fast forward, moved into telecoms, and I worked in telecoms for 25 odd years, and I still do work in telecoms. I still have a day job. And within that, the selling was different, because now you're selling what is quite a complex product, where the complexity is hidden from people, right? And we talk about, in our world, we talk about the dumb pipes, or the pipes that are in the ground, right, that bring you your internet at home, for example. But behind that, there's a huge amount of technology that sits there, and a huge amount of complexity. And when you're dealing with big businesses, as I was dealing with banks, I was dealing with insurance companies, I was dealing with manufacturers, I was dealing with all sorts, the whole selling process has to change. And it took me some time to understand that actually I'm no longer selling to this person who's had in front of me. We're two business people having a conversation about a business outcome that they're looking to achieve. And I'm here to support them and serve them and make sure that they get what they require from this. And once you change that narrative in your mind, then no matter whatever pressure you're getting from your management about the metrics, right, the number of meetings, your funnel metrics, the amount of deal closures, all of that noise that happens, when you're in front of the customer, you're there to serve them. And it makes selling so much easier, because you're not now trying to push a product, you're trying to push an outcome. And that outcome is always in the interest of the customer. So that, for me, that mindset shift was really, really important as I went through that process, because my first early days sales was very much more about, well, you got the customer in front of you, you got to close that deal whilst the customer is there, sat in front of you. You can't walk out without a signature. That sort of approach, it doesn't work in a business to business environment. So that's kind of where we are now, right? 3 years, let's say 3 years ago from now. And of course, AI is changing the world massively.
Yeah, I love that that's perfect. This is exactly the answer I was hoping you would give, because I have said, I've started this new company, the Kronos Group, which is a peer-to-peer company, for entrepreneurs. And because I had one for 25 years I was in, and it was absolutely the greatest thing I ever did. I wouldn't be sitting here had I not joined that group. And so the way that I am building this company, and I have a young kid, happens to be my nephew, 32 years old, and he knows everything about all of these things. I'm not ignorant about tech. I'm not ignorant about the internet or any of those things. But this new way of selling, I keep saying, I'm used to shaking a hand across. Put me in a room with somebody, and away we go. That's, you get the call, you make the call, you get the introduction, and then if I can be in the room, I can make that sale. This way of doing it across cameras and doing ads, or whatever the new ways of digitally and email and all of the rest of the things have a depersonalized kind of aspect to it that I am enjoying learning, frustratingly enjoying learning, because it's really uncomfortable. But I'm going to go back to something else that you said that was really, again, you and I are mirroring each other. I tell people all the time, young guys in particular, if you can sell door to door, I'll use this as an example. If you can sell door to door, that means if you can sell, one thing to every 50 doors you knock on, you can do any job in the world. I mean, literally, you just need to know like you said, you need to know the details. You need to be educated and versed on what you're selling. But there's not a more difficult job in the world than selling door to door. And if you can make a living or have some success selling door to door, I think you can have success in almost, you're not going to go be a doctor, but you get my point.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I didn't do door-to-door selling. Mine was a different sort of model, but that cold calling is the next equivalent of that, right? Picking up the phone. That's
right. Yeah, and I use that as an outside example, but cold calling. Yeah.
And that fear of rejection is massive, right? And that being made to feel like you're not worthy because it comes from inside you. It's all there. And door knocking or cold calling, they're kind of both equivalents. But if you can get over it's not rejection. They're not rejecting you, right? That's the thing. It's not a personal thing. And so you've got to recognize that actually you are, again, thinking about what you've got to serve someone. If you start to think of it that way, and okay, the time's not right for this person, I'm going to go on to the next person, and take that sort of perspective on it, it makes life a lot easier. But you're right. If you can do door-to-door selling and you make 1 in 50 or 1 in 100, that is a real good success actually within that sort of space. And similarly, cold calling, it's 1%, 2% success rate on getting appointments is pretty typical. And if you're making 10%, then that's really good. But of course, there's the qualification of the lead or the qualification of whose door you're knocking on or who you're calling that can increase the success rate of that.
How important was that in those early years for you as time went on, that cold calling? For me, it was just absolutely critical. That rejection, to your point, that I could hear 100 no's and it didn't destroy my day. I had to learn that.
Yeah. In the early days in that computer company that I was setting up, absolutely cold calling was what we did, right? We phoned up people, we phoned up businesses, small businesses primarily. We had what was the Yellow Pages. I don't think they even publish it anymore from all the different regions. And we would literally just hit the phones, and every day you're phoning and looking to make a deal. And actually we were pretty successful in doing that because we were at the right time with the right sort of product. Everyone wanted to get a personal computer. Everyone wanted to look at how they could bring their business up. And in those days, the IBM PC, personal PC cost something like $4,000, $5,000 or pounds, straight dollars to pound conversion. And we were selling a computer for £1,000 or £1,500. And so there's a huge difference there. So people could, it was democratizing the access to computing power in many ways. So it was a good time to be building a business. And we went from standing start to 10 million. Maybe we could have done more, but we always had the cash flow, right? We were self-funding our business, where there wasn't loans from the bank or loans from other people. And so I learned a lot about running stock control within that, which is kind of weird, right? You're in a sales role, but understanding what stock turnover cycles look like, how the margin impact is on your business, and what the margin impact means to the ability to compound that across the different stock that you're selling. And it became, in some ways, when I'm talking about it now, it sounds quite complex, but it was really interesting to see the impact of how we were compounding the growth of the business whilst in a market where the average price of your unit is coming down, because that's what happens with computers, right? As the things get older, the price comes down. So it was an interesting time, that was.
Yeah, that's it. And it was happening quick too. I mean, the commoditization of computers in those days. I mean, it was just seems like it was every quarter there was something new and the pricing kept coming down. Once it hit, it just was nuts.
Yes, yeah, new chips, new processors, new memory, new hard drives, and it was just constant change.
Yeah, you learn really quick what your net gross margins are, and what cash flow is, and what the turn rate on your AR is. All these things that most new entrepreneurs, yeah, I'll get to. And I'm like, no, you're not going to get to it. It's going to get to you. Trust me, if you don't know. That's right.
Exactly.
You don't know what that AR turn is. Right away, you're going to be in trouble. Yeah. Let me go back to your partnership. I'm curious about that, because you only went 10 months. So many times entrepreneurs want to, because I think it's by our nature, push. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to make it happen. You were a young man, smart enough to not do that. Here in America, maybe there's a bit of a cultural difference. I don't know. You tell me. But we don't like to fail. I mean, if you come from the streets like I did, we don't like to fail. And so you're just going to, tell yourself. Now, again, I have made fortunes because of that approach. Mm-hmm. I have lost fortunes because of that approach, right?
Yeah.
So it's both sides of it. From your perspective, I'm fascinated by that at 10 months, you were able to say, this is not going to work and I'm not going to keep pushing this thing uphill. Give me a little bit more insight into that.
So none of us likes to fail. And absolutely, I felt like a failure when I decided that that's what's going to be the case. But then when I stopped and thought about it, it wasn't me. It wasn't my inability. In fact, the forecasts and everything that I put together were accurate. We were making track, and we were actually doing better than the forecasts. What I lacked in the if you like, the box to carry on pushing through was these guys had their black book of contacts. They had experience in real estate that I didn't have. And primarily our business was a real estate business. It was about selling and renting out property. And that was where the bulk of the cash flow was going to come from. So without that, I wasn't going to fund them anymore. I wasn't going to, I myself was running out of cash. I was young, right? I didn't have that much money to be able to put into that. So it was, I suppose you might call it a clinical decision that, well, I can't give them any more money. They haven't brought to the table what they said they were going to bring in terms of money. They're trying to sell their way out of the fact that they haven't got cash. And I know the sales cycle is going to be 3 months, 4 months for a particular deal to happen. I could project that it's not going to, then we're not going to make it, because then the next tranche falls due, and then the next tranche falls due. So it was just a matter of, let's do a clean cut now, rather than trying to push through, trying to say, okay, well, I'll take your shares off you. I'll take your shares off you. I'll make it work myself. It was just, it didn't sit right. And also at that time, I was in the late 20s. I was engaged to get married. I kind of wanted some stability in my new married life, right? Rather than trying to run this business that I didn't feel I had the full skill set for. So it made sense just to stop it and cut it.
I always like to, on the podcast, got a lot of young guys listen, a lot of guys in London, as a matter of fact, over in the UK. And whenever some terms come up that I think that people won't understand, I make assumptions, right? Because I deal with them all of the time. And I like to stop and kind of make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about. So if you could just in 1 minute, talk about you ran out of cash, the sales cycle, and then you had a new tranche coming up, right? You and I know what that means, but tell that to a layman as something that they might look out for in their business going forward, why that was so disastrous.
Yeah, perfect. And also there are times when I will use British English, which doesn't necessarily translate into American English or vice versa. So so when you think about a business, you've got the cash going out of the business, right? And that's pretty much fixed. You've got wages, you've got rent, you've got overheads, you've got the various overheads of a business. And you've got your sales that are coming in that are bringing in the cash. And what we had in our business was that we knew that our business was going to ramp. So we were going to get more cash in, but there's a point where your overheads are there, your cash is kind of coming in, but there's that inflection point, right, where the two need to marry. But we were short of that, so we were going to have to put some money in it, and that was the tranche of money, right? The next payment, if you like, from us to the business to get us over that hump. And when you have a sales cycle of 3 or 4 months, it means that you start your process of selling something now, but the actual money doesn't necessarily come in, or the contract doesn't get signed until 3 or 4 months down the road. And that's typical in real estate in the UK. It's about a 3 to 4 month sales cycle. It can be a little bit longer from the moment someone says, yes, I'll buy this property, to actually the sale completing and the money's getting exchanged. So in that period, you've got to fund yourself, right? You've got to keep your lights on your business. So what do? You try and sell more. You try and get more and more deals of that nature. So you're able to build a funnel, as we call it, right? A funnel of deals that are going to come through that will see you through those moments when things are a little bit quiet and you're still going to pay your overheads. So hopefully that explains what I meant, what I said there.
Yes. Very well said. Yeah, you have to finance your sales. You have to finance the money you haven't got, but you've sold, and somebody's got to pay the bills. And so if you don't have a bunch of money in the bank, a little something like cash flow is going to come up and bite you. Now, if you could pre-sell all of that stuff, you wouldn't have that problem. Problem is, in your case, you had a 3 to 4 month lag, which is brutal. And I've seen 30-day lags wipe companies out. So, for a 30-day turn. So AR is everything.
It said that there was a point where IBM nearly ran out of cash, right? And who thought a massive company like IBM would run out of cash? But cash is king in business. So no matter how big or small the business, that cash flow is so important.
I agree. When you hear, we'll change subjects a little bit. That was excellent. When you hear somebody say, I want to be successful, what do you think they actually mean when they say that?
Oh, this kind of goes to the heart of what Success Matters podcast is about. So,
I did my research.
let's break this down. There's a number of factors that people use for success, right? And you and I, having had a sales background and having had a commercial background, oftentimes that success is measured by either a metric that the company has given you as the salesperson, right? Your sales target. It's making President's Club. It's doing this. It's doing that. And that becomes sometimes what people associate with success. There's then also the, if you like, the societal things, right? The societal expectations that someone who's successful drives a Ferrari or has this big house or, wears a Rolex watch or goes on 10 holidays a year or whatever it is, right? There's that kind of thing. But so when someone says, I want to be successful, my first question is, well, what does success mean to you? That's the first thing, right? And different people at different stages in their life will have a different motivation of success. So when you're young and you've got a young family, then success could be that I can pay for their school fees, or, I got enough cash coming in that I can buy a bigger house because my kids are so small, because there's 9 of us living in a 3-bedroom house, or, whatever the thing is. So that can be one of those sorts of metrics. But as you go through life and you realize that actually there's a lot more to life than necessarily those things,